Good morning, everyone. Hello. Shepard just ripped my microphone off, so how sad that everything she said is entirely true. So yeah, I want to thank my sister first and foremost for introducing me. I know there's very few things in the world she would rather do than stand in front of all of you. So thanks, Tiff. And again, thanks for being here this morning. It's almost as if this is mandatory. So I'm glad that you guys are here. Thank you for supporting me. I know you had other places you could have been this morning. No, you couldn't? Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I know it's Monday morning, and I know chapel on Monday morning isn't always the easiest place to be awake and engaged. Trust me, I just did Bible lesson study with my hall, and we weren't the most engaged group. So what we're going to do is, everyone's going to stand up. Yeah. And we're going to look into our partner's eyes, and we're going to say sweet romantic things to them. No. No, I'm kidding. Instead, what we're going to do, we're going to do a quick physical warm-up. Some of you guys may have done this in different, maybe, I don't know if it's a camp thing. I learned it as an improvisation warm-up, and we do it before every improv club warm-up. And if you're not awake after this, then quite frankly, you're dead. So we're going to do this as a warm-up, and then you guys are all going to be alert and engaged. Teachers, feel free to bring this back to the classroom before those lectures or discussions. It'll wake the group up. Everyone with your right hand up, right fist up. We're going to shake it out 8 times, and we're going to count it off while we do it too. You guys ready? Here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Foot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Woo! Yes. You can sit now, right? Who of you is not awake now, right? It totally works. So when I got invited to do chapel this morning, my first thought, of course, is, oh, wow, I'm going to do yes and. I'll talk about improvisation. It'll be great. But this idea came to me that's been sitting with me for a while, and it has nothing to do with improvisation, and it has nothing to do with anything that I can speak qualified in any realm. But I would like to talk to you about it this morning. And it's something that, it's an idea that I hold very dear to my heart right now. And what I'm going to talk to you this morning is about the caterpillar. You're almost there, Aaron. You're almost there. Aaron Switzer, let's give him a round of applause. So I'm going to talk about the caterpillar, more specifically the Aaron Switzer species. No, not Aaron, but I do want to thank Aaron. Aaron did that at the Parents' Weekend show, and I'm like, he stole my idea. So I had to use him. I had to use him for my present. Can we please get that picture off here? All right. So my chapel this morning is on this theme of what I'm going to call hanging in the goo. And please don't take that the wrong way. We're going to talk more about it. And so I've been really fascinated by metaphors, and specifically the metaphor of the butterfly. And if we noticed how efforted it was for Aaron to come out here and move around, is what I have to imagine maybe a caterpillar's life is just this sort of slow, deliberate, efforted life of moving around and just trying to work for everything that you get. But something really interesting happens to caterpillars, as that we all know. And so that's what I want to focus on my chapel today. So what I'm going to show you real quickly is a time-lapse video, as we know, as a caterpillar actually forms its cocoon into the chrysalis state. And so it's about a minute video. So Dwight, if we can go ahead and cue that up, and then we'll talk about what happens. So obviously there's already one who's formed, and now we've got this guy. Now, I can't imagine that feels too good. Huh, right? So fascinating. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's actually going on, and I have to tell you ahead of time, biologists and biology teachers, I apologize in advance. I'm sure I have no idea what I'm talking about. But Wikipedia does. Sometimes. And so what I learned when I was looking at this metamorphosis for the caterpillar, a couple interesting details, is that caterpillars grow through a series of molts. Each intermediate stage is called an instar. The last molt takes them into the inactive pupal or chrysalis stage. And so that's what we saw. We saw that last molt take place and created the cocoon, which is the chrysalis state. And a chrysalis or nympha is the pupal stage of butterflies. So here we are. We have our butterfly in its chrysalis, which actually in this picture it looks pretty cool. It's kind of shiny and cool. But in actuality, it's just kind of a black, that black kind of hard mass that's just sort of hanging there. And so what's going on with this metamorphosis is really the whole series of changes that an insect goes through from egg to adult. But what I thought was cool about that is that the entire process is a metamorphosis. It's not that there's just one metamorphosis. The entire process is the metamorphosis. And then this is really cool. Before a caterpillar can become a butterfly, it must become goo. All right, so there's no jumping from caterpillar to butterfly. It has to go to this goo state. Within the cocoon, the form of the caterpillar totally dissolves into a liquid that is rich with nutrients and potential. It's super goo. So think about this just for a minute. Put yourself in the legs of a caterpillar. There's lots of them. And so you're going through life, and then you start to feel something. You're like, that doesn't feel right. It's like something's poking out of me, all right? You start to feel your body going through changes. Your world is going through changes. For all intents and purposes, your world is probably falling apart. And so as you start to go through this metamorphosis, not only are you creating this cocoon that you go into, and your whole life, your whole world is changing, once it's in that state, it's not like the caterpillar body just grows wings and bursts. Its entire physical substance breaks down, dissolves, and turns to goo. I mean, imagine that. Everything just gooifies. It turns to goo. And what is the goo? Rich with nutrients and potential. What in the world is the caterpillar thinking as it's turning to goo? What is going on there? And so when I think about this caterpillar experience, it makes me think a little bit of what Mrs. Eddy talks about chemicalization. And I don't want to create a perfect correlation between the two, but let's look at what Mrs. Eddy says about chemicalization from Science and Health. Here let a word be noticed, which we will better understood hereafter, chemicalization. By chemicalization, I mean the process which mortal mind and body undergo in the change of belief from a material to a spiritual basis. And then later in Science and Health, what I term chemicalization is the upheaval produced when immortal truth is destroying erroneous mortal belief. Mental chemicalization brings sin and sickness to the surface, forcing impurities to pass away, as is the case with a fermenting fluid. Impurities passing away, that dissolving, the complete dissolving of matter, turning into this goo. And I think about different challenges that we go through and our own transformations that we go through. It feels like things are falling apart. And if it's a physical experience, it might feel like our body is breaking down on us. If it's a relationship, it might feel like a relationship with a friend or a boyfriend, girlfriend, a spouse, a parent is completely falling apart. And it can be the scariest thing in the world. Mrs. Eddy also says in Science and Health, through great tribulation we enter the kingdom. Trials are proof of God's care. Spiritual development germinates not from seed sown in the soil of material hopes, but when these decay, love propagates anew the higher joys of spirit, which have no taint of earth. Each successive stage of experience unfolds new views of divine goodness and love. Each successive stage of experience. The metamorphosis is a continuous set of stages. It's constantly taking place. Metamorphosis isn't from caterpillar to butterfly. It's every process along the way. Yet in that chrysalis state, the most transformation is taking place, and it is the ugliest, scariest place to be. When you think of that caterpillar, what it's going through, it could not choose to want to be in that position for anything in its life. It is the scariest, darkest, grossest, messiest place it could be. And so I want to describe what I feel just two goo moments that maybe you guys can relate to. And I think it helps sort of bring this idea home for me. A couple years ago, I was taking a class, and I was at my sister's, that one over there. And she has a trampoline, and so I'm jumping on the trampoline, and my wife is out there, and I'm feeling really good about myself. And so to make a long story short, I try to do a flip. I bail out at the top, and I come down straight on my head, and my neck just cracks and apple pops. All right? So I jump up on the trampoline. My body is breaking down. I'm going numb. I'm losing consciousness. I'm terrified, absolutely terrified. My world is falling apart. All right, and in that moment, I'm able to get a hold of my Christian Science teacher, and she's able to allay that initial fear, and I'm able to feel my safety. I'm able to feel God's safety in that moment. But immediately after that, once I knew I was out of the clear as far as death, I was in a tremendous amount of pain. And I remember going for a walk. It was a beautiful spring day here in St. Louis, and I went for a walk. It was warmer than it would normally be. The stars were out. It was like I was standing in the middle of a planetarium, and I'm just talking out loud to God. I'm just sort of having this very sort of audible. I'm glad no one was around. The neighbors weren't around. They thought that my sister's brother was crazy. So I'm walking around because I was in so much pain. I just felt like I've got to keep moving. I got to keep moving. And so I'm looking under the stars, and I'm just talking to God. And I'm just talking, and I'm just feeling that love, feeling that connection. And I was in that chrysalis state. I was in the goo. Everything. My body had been breaking down. My whole mental consciousness of what life was and what body was and what my connection was to the divine was breaking down. And I felt this new closeness to the divine. I felt like Mrs. Eddy standing from the stars, not looking at them. I felt this total, complete oneness where my body was completely irrelevant. And I just felt so at peace. But I was in the goo. It was ugly. It was messy. It was scary, and it was painful. but I felt safe there. I felt total transformation taking place. And then after that, the healing just took place over that next few days, over those next few weeks of freedom and healing. It was perfect. So I cherish that moment of being in the goo. It was where real transformation happens, and it was scary, and that's okay. Right now, I have a family member who is so smack dab in the middle of the goo, and it's terrifying, so terrifying for them. But there's so much good taking place. And I'm able to talk to them all the time and listen and just see the insights that they're having. They wouldn't ask to be in this situation for anything. But yet, they are embracing it. They see all the good, all the lessons that are to be learned by embracing that goo, by embracing those trials of proof of God's care. Instead of being in the goo and hoping to get out of it or waiting for it to be over, you look at it and you go, God, what do I have to learn here? And you allow that learning and that transformation to happen. So what does the goo demand? This is just my personal opinion. What the goo, when we find ourselves in the goo, whether it's a class, again, a relationship, a physical healing, the goo is demanding something if we want transformation. It's demanding total surrender to the divine. As I was standing under the stars, I said, God, I have no answers, but you do. And I totally just let everything fall away, totally surrendering to the one mind. Not my will, but thine be done. Not what I want to happen, totally irrelevant. What we want to happen, guys, our outcomes, totally irrelevant. And that's what brings us the pain and suffering. When we let go of that, when we surrender to the divine and let love's plan unfold, that is cherishing the goo. Letting go of our own human opinion. Just filling ourselves with humility and grace. Thanking God. Thank you, God, for this wonderful opportunity of transformation. How often have we said that in the middle of a difficult situation? Think of all the Bible characters in the Bible. And we don't celebrate any Bible character that he was born rich, became king, and everything was great. There are no stories like that in the Bible. Every Bible character, Jesus, everyone had to go through these rich, difficult, scary goo moments. And that's why their lives are so big. And that's why we learn from them, and that's why we celebrate. But the humility and grace that they have. And then really more important, being awake and alert to everything this experience is teaching us. It's not just good enough to be in a bad experience and go, this sucks. All right, can't wait for it to be over. If that is our mindset, we're not going to learn a thing. And guess what? It's going to repeat itself because we haven't learned our lesson. It's just a cycle. If you learn from it, you grow out of it. If you don't learn from it, guess what? It's going to find you again. And that it is going to find you again. It's just that your growth opportunity is going to find you again. Mrs. Eddy says, in Christian Science, there is never a retrograde step, never a return to positions outgrown. It's in the lesson this week. I'm sure you guys all got it this morning. There are no retrograde steps. I think of the caterpillar. When the caterpillar busts out of the cocoon and becomes a butterfly, here's a few questions that I'm pondering right now and I don't know the answers to. Does the caterpillar remember being a butterfly? Does the butterfly remember being a caterpillar? Does it remember that? Does it know what it went through? And of course, can the butterfly ever go back to being a caterpillar? No. We cannot go backwards. There are no retrograde steps. Once we have proven something and grown from it, we're free from it. We're beyond it. We move forward. As much as we want to go back and experience something again that happened before, we can't. We've learned from it. We move forward. And I love this African proverb, a calm sea does not make a skilled sailor. We don't always welcome the stormy seas, but those are the opportunities that make us who we are. I know all the athletic teams, the football team, the hard struggles, and the soccer and cross country, and all what you guys are doing, the tough practices, the tough meets, those are the ones that bring the most growth. It's not by walking over a lesser opponent. It's when we're faced with that adversity. It's when we find ourselves in the middle of that goo. Mrs. Eddy also says, final deliverance from error whereby we rejoice in immortality, boundless freedom, and sinless sense is not reached through paths and flowers, nor by pinning one's faith without works to another's vicarious effort. She's saying you got to do it. You got to take it on. You got to take it on full steam ahead. And it's not always pretty. It's not always easy. I love this. This is just, when you think about this, again from Mrs. Eddy. In the year 1866, I discovered the Christ science or divine laws of truth, life, truth, and love, and named my discovery Christian Science. God had been graciously preparing me during many years to the reception of this final revelation of the absolute divine principle of scientific mental healing. Her choice of words are interesting. Graciously preparing. Mrs. Eddy's life. This is 1866. Nothing up to her point in 1866 was gracious. Nothing. In fact, if you wanted to write a tragic story of a person who had one of the most difficult human lives, Mrs. Eddy might be that character. There was nothing gracious about her experience. And for her to look back on her life and look at all the hardships and all the struggle and go, wow, thank you, God, you are graciously preparing me. That takes humility. That takes grace. And how often do we look back on our own life, on our own experiences, on our own struggles, and do we go, man, I thank God that's over with? Or do we go, whew, thank you, God, you are graciously preparing me for the growth that I just experienced. Oh, we got to go back. We got to see how our butterfly does. So if we got that video, we're going to cue it up real quick, and I've got one more poem to finish. We've got the time lapse down here if you want to. So we find ourselves in the goo. So out of the goo comes this total new, beautiful concept, this beautiful idea. And it doesn't just happen once for us, guys. And obviously nature with the caterpillar to the butterfly captures it as this one glorious experience. It is continuously happening to us our entire life. A friend sent me a poem last night, and the student who wrote this was a student here a few years ago. His name was Duncan Wilder. And recently he wrote a poem, which I didn't know about until last night, called The Courage of the Butterfly. And so this is how I'd like to end chapel this morning with his poem. From tons of little feet on solid ground to being wrapped in a haven safe and sound, hanging alone, being night after night, gently pondering, preparing for flight. This is the caterpillar's vision quest, a slow, silent, transforming rest. Then out of the stillness, a sudden shaking, a beautiful butterfly in the making. Its fight for freedom shakes both over and under, a world of insects left tantalized in wonder. Then finally it bursts with a conviction so freeing and realizes the new form of its unchangeable being. No longer creeping on the earth below, its time down there feels so long ago. But with these gigantic, colorful wings, it's aware of the freedom they bring. Having never left its feet, however many there be, this call to fly might scare one to flee. But fleeing isn't a concept that this creature knows, so it leaps full of courage, and away it goes. The butterfly's answer is always yes. A life lived without limits is put to the test. A test? No problem, it says with no frets, because a butterfly's ready no matter what call it gets. The biggest leap of faith in the animal realm comes from an insect with trust at its helm. Its purpose now clearer than ever before, to live to be free and courageously soar. Have a good day, everybody.